Okay, let's move on. We want to keep the content relatively fast and furious and fresh. Next up then, Fan Pulse Lap 2. You have voted, we have listened. We're going to pick up a discussion this week on Speedway's greatest innovations. So there's a very broad subject. So Speedway, is 100 years old as a sport, which is pretty phenomenal. And I guess over that course, I'm not asking you to look back to 1928 or anything, but looking back over that period, in a technical sense or procedural or maybe something on the periphery of the sport that has been introduced, which is still present to this day, and which has benefited the sport or supporters' enjoyment of the sport. So a very broad subject. There's no wrong answer, but Carol, I'll ask you first if you don't mind this time. What any great innovations to Speedway which have lasted the course?
Yeah, well, obviously, the number one, I think, for everyone, and probably everyone will say this, is the introduction of air fences. We all know, how dangerous this sport is, and we know that riders go out there every race, and to be fair, are putting their life on the line, and that's what it is, and if you can be safe, or at least make them safer, it's got to be probably one of the best innovations for Speedway. It's never going to be perfect. We know that, and we've recently seen, obviously, with Ty, that you're never ever going to make it the safest sport in the world. You can't, but that is part of the sport, unfortunately. But if we can help in any way, and obviously air fences, they're got to be up there as probably the best thing to for this time, because as we've talked about earlier, the bikes are getting faster, the tracks are they're more erratic, the tracks are not brilliant now, so safety first for me, and air fences have got to be number one.
Do you know what, Carol, I was going to do one of those magician things where I write something down on a bit of paper and open it up, and if I had done it, and I wish I had now, it would have said air fence on it. That was definitely my number one innovation, and I'm not sure how many years they've been around now, but it must be getting closer to 15, 20 years that they've been mandatory, at least in the UK, and you think back, Stuart, Robson, Stuart, McDonald, you think back to some of your earlier riding days, right? Before pre air fences, and there was some frightening crashes and some frightening looking safety fences. So the air fence has got to be right up there, right?
I totally agree with Carl. It is that would be my number one. First thing I would have thought of that, and great. It's a great thing, and I think it was Brigall that came up with the one of Tony Briggs. Fantastic introduction to the sport, and it's been brilliant. I think they came about in around about 2006-ish, okay. 2005, 2006, 2007, around then. I can't remember exactly, because I think they were compulsory in the sort of top league in England before, in the UK, before they were in the second league, and brilliant thing to bring into, and it's saved a lot of seriously bad injuries.
Absolutely. Stuart McDonald, Carol made the point. As good as they are, and as many injuries as that they've reduced and saved as they have, undoubtedly, they're never going to be perfect. But I'm just thinking in the safety and speedway space. Even things like presumably helmet technology, I imagine, must have advanced considerably, even in a couple of decades, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you look at, back when we rode back 20, 30 years ago, it was a back protector and that was it. You didn't have anything else on. Nowadays you've got neck frames, braces, the helmets are obviously a lot thicker. But like Carl says, the introduction of them to British Speedway has been a massive plus. I think to look at some of the accidents that you can see nowadays, it's like, the guys were saying, the tracks are that fast now, and the bikes are that fast. When some of the guys hit those air fences, they just bounce off them and get back up again. Mm-hmm. And pre-air fence, you'd be broken leg, broken collarbone, you know. And I remember when I was racing at Hull one year, and Robbo was actually off gate 1 and I was off gate 2. It was heat 1, and we made it together, and we sort of connected going into the first bend, and the two of us went straight through the fence, right under the fence. Both bikes were smashed up. I think you actually went to hospital, Robbo, and I had to jump in Will Beveridge's bike for the rest of the meeting. But you know, when you look at what they've saved, I think, and you know, they're a phenomenal tool that the Speedway use, obviously for the safety aspect, and definitely good.
Is that a memory that you cherish, Stuart Robson?
No, I had many bad accidents around Hull, unfortunately, and I loved the place. I thought it was great, but no, I don't enjoy the accidents at any track, never mind Hull.
What about, again, I'm thinking from a spectator's point of view, I'm thinking of innovations that Speedway as a sport has introduced that might have benefited spectators more than riders. So one thing, and sometimes I'm not convinced it's been a huge benefit, but I'm interested in your views on the dirt deflector. Has that actually made life on the terracings a bit cleaner?
If you stand on a corner, you still get covered. They're probably not as bad. But I don't really know if it's certainly helped a bit. You know, it's kept the shield down a lot. But I think a lot of people used to like that part of the sport. You know, back in the day, and maybe not so much these days. They like the fact that they got hit by stones and stuff and got a bit covered. It's definitely helped a lot with, especially on the snotty days when it's wet and snotty in the, because then. Everyone gets covered then, regardless of where you stood. But they've helped a lot, but not completely. They don't. It keeps it down a little bit, doesn't it? I think it keeps keep a lot of shield on the track, I guess, and it always helps cut costs a bit for the promoters in one respect.
I mean, Colonel Johnston, I remember a couple of episodes ago you talked about, we're talking about track prep, and you talked about £800 worth of shale going over the fence. But you know, do you have any view on whether the dirt deflectors help to reduce the shale loss or not?
Not really, no. And it all depends, obviously, on what tracks you're at. Like, obviously, Peterborough had a solid timber fence, so it kept a lot of shale within anyway. Yeah. When you go to, obviously, Bellevue now, that's a chain link fence, you're always going to lose shale through that chain link. You know, you probably lose far more through Bellevue's fence in a season than what you would do at Peterborough. Yeah, they did make a difference to a degree, unless you was racing at Ipswich. Ipswich always tend to run their dirt deflectors a lot higher, and then when they're being measured, they drop them in a little hole by the Robbo probably know. They drop the bike in a little hole so it sits slightly lower. So when they check the dirt deflectors, they're the right height, and then they pull out and they're 2 inches above where they should be. There's always little things that they do to, that you're never going to stop it. But yeah, it did make a difference. Like Robert says, when it's wet, I think it makes more of a difference. It does keep the shale on the surface, but I always find with that, going back to you saying about spectators, as a spectator, you always knew the newbies because they always went and stood by the fence on bends 1 and 2 for the first 2 races, and then after that you see them move back, and I think that give them more entertainment than what was probably on track sometimes. So but yeah, it's another innovation that was obviously good, but yeah, did it benefit everybody? I don't think it did, to be perfectly honest. It was it's another money making scheme for somebody else as well, isn't it? The way I look at it, these boys, Christ, the cost of a dirt deflector, how many did you used to bend a season? It was, and then they picked up on all these copies, and it was like, you can't use them. The amount of times that we was at tracks and they was taken off because they're a copy, a Polish copy of Brigos, so it was just another thing that upset the boys, I think, as well.
But Big Mac, look, thinking about the bikes, and the technology, anything in that space, we went from uprights to lay downs. There's been all sorts of changes to silencers and carbs and all that good stuff. Anything that jumps out at you as being a positive innovation?
What Carl just said was fantastic. Well done, Carl. Listen, I think a lot of it's down to what Carl said. It's all about making money, isn't it? For a lot of these manufacturers, they bring the dirt deflector came in, and again, like Robbo says, I think it maybe benefited on the wet, but on a whole, I think it was just something that was going to fill pockets to start with, and obviously the different companies that have manufactured it now, the laydowns, the uprights. I mean, I never really understood the reason or whatever behind that, and I stuck with the upright for a couple of years after the laydown came out, and then I jumped on it, and I don't think there was much of a. I mean, obviously the ref's slightly higher, but in general terms, I think it was just something that an idea that somebody came up with that we're now in laydowns. That's it. If you fancy an upright, then you can always go to Gary O'Hare's day out in Scunthorpe.
Yes.
He's Wesley days, he is the upright days there. I mean, I've got an upright here. Like I said before, I got off Nigel Crabtree, a GM. But again, it's like Carl says, I'll back up what he says. It was all about making money. The things that's been introduced and it's not really benefited. Some of the riders. I think it's just been
change for change's sake. Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah, Stuart, you need to do one of these episodes sitting on your upright. That would be cool. Yeah. See if you could introduce it to one of our episodes. Listen, one final innovation that crossed my mind, and I think it is an innovation, and I think it has benefited Speedway. I think, because if it hadn't, it would have been scrapped, I'm quite sure, is live streaming. So, it was obviously it was COVID and all that happened around COVID, when we were all locked away and couldn't get trackside, that more and more clubs in the UK in particular began to latch on and trial live streaming, and to their credit, BSN are doing a tremendous job. The motorway miles, never mind anything else, in terms of effort that those lads put in to live stream Speedway is incredible. And I mean, I think Speedway fans, you can be on holiday and still watch your team in action if they're on live stream. You can be okay. There's an argument that it might impact crowds, but that was my point. If there was some correlation, then I'm quite sure live streaming wouldn't be sanctioned. But so any views on live streaming has been a big feather in the cap of Speedway?
I think when you look at what it's done for the sport, I mean, obviously you've got Carl that's been team manager in his recent years, and he'll know what the sort of impact it's had on the tracks with people going. But I think what you just said there, Derek, about people being on holiday, there's a lot of people that can't get to the Speedway now, and it's a simple click with your phone, with your laptop, your iPad, and I think that it does keep people away from the matches, no doubt about it. But I do think it's a massive benefit for people that can't get to the matches themselves, because through whatever circumstances. So that'll end Fan Pulse Lap 2. Thanks for voting for the greatest innovations in Speedway. Hopefully we've picked off some interesting choices, but as ever, if there's anything that you consider to be a great innovation that we haven't mentioned, then please shame us and submit a comment on social media or below this YouTube output, and we'll feature that and perhaps even revisit and make a better job of covering some great innovations. Okay, let's pick up some of your messages. All text form, still no voice note has manifested via the medium of WhatsApp. So someone out there still has the opportunity to be the first ever 360 Speedster viewer to submit a voice note. Go on, make my week next week. Right, okay, text messages. Thank you for writing in. First up, Dean from Sheffield. I wrote in for episode 1. Thank you, Dean, for writing back, and was concerned about how the Tigers would cover for Woofy. Must admit that the changes have been solid. We've seen off those aces with plenty to spare. That was a reference, I'm sure, to Bank Holiday Monday, where Sheffield very nearly won at the National Speedway Stadium, and more than comfortably won
in the return leg at Owlerton on Monday night. Yeah, the introduction of Justin Sedgman and Louis Kerr seems to be working so far for the Tigers, and good also to see Woofy out and about and already back in the gym, and his rehabilitation effort has looks to be a strong one. So Woofy, good luck to you. Keep up the good work. Dean, thank you for writing back into 360 Speedway. Don't be a stranger. You're welcome to write in as many times as you want. Okay, Jan and Jack from Banbury, which I think is near Oxford, right? Jan and Jack, already looks like the signing of Cookie could be an absolute revelation and masterstroke by Peter Schrock. To think that Brum could have signed him! Exclamation mark. Well, I'm not sure in terms of averages whether Birmingham could or couldn't have. Although I'm sure they could have made that work. But yeah, Craig Cook, a 15-point maximum at Perry Bar for Oxford Spires on Monday, Bank Holiday Monday, and that was a kind of basement battle, right? Birmingham and the Spires hadn't started their seasons particularly well, and that was the first win of two on the day for the Spires. And suddenly, a week in Speedway looks like a long time indeed, and the Spires suddenly on the up. But I've got to say that the Brummies put up a bit of a fight in both meetings, and still some work to do. And fingers crossed. I do want the Brummies to get off the mark and turn that corner and maybe have that morale boosting first win. Rachel from Ipswich, Rachel has written before, I'm still absolutely loving just how strong my witches have started the season. Dan and Tom, that's Dan Thompson and Tom Brennan, are making such a difference and backing Emil and Doyley. Well, of course, another three riders in that side that you haven't mentioned, Rachel, who are doing a job as well. But yes, Dan Thompson having a storming season for the Witches and for Glasgow. He's not doing too badly for Glasgow. He's made the British final. He's in the under-21 final a week on Sunday. And Tom Brennan absolutely has made a big difference to the Witches. And the guys on last week's episode were extolling the virtues of Tom Brennan and his future promise. So all things shipshape down at Foxhall. Thanks for writing in, Rachel. And finally for now, Michelle R. from Acox Green. Michelle, I think you might have written in before. So Michelle, Monday night at Perry Bar was pretty agonising. We really tried so very hard against Oxford, so very close to that confidence-boosting first win, which was pretty much what I said a couple of minutes ago. Yeah, listen, I do feel for the Brummies. They've had a torrid time last season. They've started this season in better shape, showing more promise. And hopefully that first win will be the first of many, Michelle, and hopefully it's just around the corner. There's certainly some capability in that Brummie side, and Paco Castagna had a really strong debut for the Brummies. Daniel Hume will want to score some points next time out, but fingers crossed for you, Michelle, and your fellow Brummies.